The human delivery boy who unlocked the lost language of the Star King's weeks passed, and Leo no longer wore his delivery jacket. Instead, he moved through the halls of the Kalos archive in simple gray robes given to him by the virile scholars. He still felt out of place, but less like an intruder and more like a guest who had accidentally walked into a sacred room and been asked to stay. Luna remained at his side, not as a guard, but as a guide. And slowly as a friend, she taught him how to read the emotional signatures in the Star King's script, not by memorizing symbols but by quieting his mind and letting the meaning rise like warmth from a cup of tea. The scholars watched with cautious hope. They began recording everything Leo experienced each time he touched a new artifact from the vault. His reactions became data, not cold numbers but living interpretations. When he placed his hand on a carved stone tablet and flinched, they knew it held a memory of loss. When he smiled at a woven light tapestry, they understood it carried joy. The Star Kings had not written history. They had stored feeling, and Leo was the first key that fit news of the human who spoke the silent language spread beyond Kalos. Emissaries arrived. From distant systems, some came in peace. Others, with suspicion, the Zenthari, a warlike reptilian species, sent a delegation not to learn, but to test. They did not believe a soft-skinned earthling could hold such power. Their leader, Korak, demanded, "Proof, bring the boy to the Chamber of Echoes," he said. "If he is truly the key, let him awaken the Great Bell." The Chamber of Echoes was a vast dome deep in the archive, where a single bell made of solidified starlight hung from the ceiling. It had not rung since the Star Kings left its surface covered in dust and silence. The Zenthari believed only a true resonant soul could make it. Singluna argued against it. "The bell is unstable. It has not been touched in centuries." But Leo agreed. He saw the challenge not as a threat but as a chance to show that this gift was not about power but connection. They walked together into the dome, the air thick with stillness. Korak and his warriors stood at the back, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Leo approached. The bell slowly. He did not reach for it with his hand. Instead, he closed his eyes and breathed deeply, remembering the feeling he had in the inner sanctum, the sorrow, the hope, the quiet love. The Star Kings left behind. A soft hum began in his chest, not loud but steady. It grew like a ripple in water and touched the bell at first. Nothing happened. Then a single pure note rang out clear and bright like morning light on snow. It did not shake the walls. It did not deafen the ears. It simply filled the space with a sound that made everyone in the room remember something precious. A mother's lullaby. A friend's laugh. A moment of peace before a storm. Korak fell to one knee. Not in defeat, but in awe. His warriors lowered their heads. Tears on their scaled faces. The bell had not judged them. It had reminded them they were more than soldiers. They were beings who had once been loved. After that, even the skeptics stopped doubting. The High Council granted Leo and Luna a ship, not a war vessel, or a luxury cruiser, but a modest research skiff named the Whisper. It was designed for long journeys and deep listening. Its walls lined with memory crystals and its core tuned to harmonic frequencies. Leo smiled when he saw it. It felt like the Blue Jay's wiser older sister. Their first mission was to visit the ruins of Eltheris, a dead moon, where the Star Kings once held their final gathering. The site had been excavated many times, but nothing useful was ever found. Luna believed the ruins were not meant to be dug up but felt. They landed at dawn. The sky pale green, the ground covered in smooth black stone that reflected the stars. Even in daylight, Leo stepped out and immediately stopped his boots, making no sound on the glassy surface. He walked toward the center of the crater where a circle of tall monoliths stood like silent sentinels. As he neared them, the air grew warm, not from heat, but from presence. He placed his palm on the nearest stone and gasped. This time the vision was different. Not a memory, but a message meant for now. The Star Kings showed him a pattern, a web of connections between species who had forgotten how to trust each other. They showed him that language was not just words, but the space between words, the silence where understanding grows. Luna watched him from a distance. She did not interrupt. She knew better than to break the thread between him and the past. When Leo finally turned to her, his eyes were clear and calm. "They want us to help others. Listen." he said. Not just hear, but really listen. She nodded. Then we begin with the closest system. The virile homeworld, on Viral. The people lived in towering spires that sang with the wind. Each city tuned to a different chord so that flying between them was like moving through a symphony. But lately the songs had grown discordant. Trade disputes and old grudges had made the chords clash. Luna's own family had not spoken to their neighbors in 3 cycles. They landed in the capital city of Silva, where Luna's mother, Elder Mela, ruled the Council of Winds. Mela was stern, her silver hair braided with threads of sound crystal. She greeted Luna with a nod but eyed Leo with cold suspicion. You bring a human into our heart chamber. She said, he is not here to speak. Maela Luna replied, he is here to listen. Maela scoffed. Listening does not fix broken treaties. Perhaps not. Leo said softly, but it might remind you why you made them in the first place. He did not argue. He did not plead. He simply sat on the floor of the heart chamber, a circular room where the wind carried voices from every district of the city. He closed his eyes and listened. At first, there was only noise, anger, fear, pride. But beneath it, he heard something else, the same hum he felt in the vault, the same quiet song the Star Kings left behind. He let it fill him, and then, without speaking, he began to hum it back. It was not loud, just a single note held steady and pure. The wind in the chamber shifted it, carried his note through the spires and into the homes of the people one by one. They paused in their arguments, they looked out their windows. They heard the note, and remembered a time before the quarrels when the city sang as One. Mela's eyes widened. She felt it too. The memory of unity not forced but chosen. By nightfall, the first bridge between rival districts was reopened, not with speeches, but with shared silence. 2 elders sat on opposite sides of a garden and simply listened to the night. Birds Leo and Luna stayed for 3 days watching, as the city slowly remembered how to be whole again. Their next stop was the Grix Hive, a massive asteroid colony where insectoid beings communicated through pheromone pulses and rhythmic tapping. The Grix had no concept of individual emotion. They thought in the collective and had long dismissed the Star Kings as irrelevant dreamers. But when Leo entered the central chamber, he did not try to speak their language. Instead, he sat in the center and let his calm presence radiate like warmth from a stone in sunlight. The Grix Queen at first ignored him, but as the hours passed, she felt something unfamiliar, a stillness that did not threaten the hive but deepened its. He approached and touched his shoulder with one delicate limb. In that moment, she understood the Star Kings had not been alone. They had chosen solitude to protect others from the weight of their evolution, and that was a form of love the Grix had never considered. The hive began to change, not all at once but in small ways. Workers paused between tasks to share a moment of quiet. Drones hummed softer melodies during transit. The Queen declared a new cycle of reflection, word of the human, and the virile woman spread faster. Now not as rumor but as invitation. Systems that had been closed for generations sent messages asking them to come, not to fix but to sit, not to teach, but to be present, back on the whisper. Luna prepared tea from Earth. Herbs Leo had brought. She watched him stare out the viewport at the endless stars. Do you ever miss delivering packages? She asked. Sometimes, he said. But this feels like the same thing, just a different kind of package. What kind? Hope, he said simply. She smiled and handed him the cup. Their next destination was the most dangerous yet. The shattered belt of Nora. A lawless zone where pirates and outcasts traded in stolen tech and broken promises. It was the last place anyone expected peace. But Leo insisted the Star King's message was not for the peaceful, it was for the hurting. They landed on a rusted station called the Hollow Eye, its corridors lit by flickering bulbs and filled with the smell of oil and sweat. Armed guards met them at the airlock, weapons drawn. We don't want scholars here, one growled. We're not scholars, Leo said. We're just passing through, the captain of the station. A scarred woman named Riva stepped forward, her eyes sharp but tired. What do you want, to listen? Leo said. Riva laughed, but there was no joy in it. Everyone talks, no one listens. Then let me be the first to stop talking, he said. She studied him, then nodded jerkily. Follow me. She led them to a dim room filled with broken comms gear and old star charts. Leo sat on a crate and waited. Riva paced, then finally spoke about her crew, about how they were not criminals but refugees from a war that erased their homeworld, about how they stole. Not for greed but to survive, Leo did not offer solutions. He did not judge. He just listened, and in that listening Riva felt seen not as a pirate but as a person. After an hour, she whispered, "What do you want from us?" "Nothing," he said, "except maybe to remind you that you're still part of the galaxy, even if it forgot you." She looked at Luna, then back at Leo. "All right," she said. "We'll listen, Tubi." The time Leo and Luna left the Hollow Eye, the crew had begun repairing old distress beacons, not to sell, but to send out quiet signals of help to others lost in the dark. The human delivery boy who unlocked the lost language of the Star King's months had passed since Leo first touched the orb in the vault, and the galaxy had begun to change, not with explosions or grand declarations, but with quiet shifts in how beings spoke to one another on dozens of worlds. People paused before answering. They listened not just to words but to the spaces between them. The whisper had become a legend, not for its speed or weapons, but for the silence it carried in its wake. Luna and Leo traveled from system to system, not as saviors, but as reminders that understanding was possible, even between those who seemed too different to ever connect. Their next destination was the twin planets of Kale and Vorn, locked in a cold war. For over 2 centuries, the two worlds orbited the same star but never spoke. They shared a history of betrayal and loss, so deep that even their children were taught to hate the other side. By name alone, Kyle was lush and green. Its people, gentle. Farmers and poets, Vorn was rocky and dry. Its citizens, engineers, and warriors both believed the other had started the war. Neither remembered why. The whisper entered the system slowly. Its engines muted, its comms silent as a courtesy. Leo and Luna sent no message. They simply drifted near the shared moon that hung between the two planets, a neutral place long abandoned. Within hours, ships from both sides appeared, not to attack but to watch. Voice crackled over open frequency. "Identify yourselves, we are travelers," Luna replied. "We mean no harm. Why are you here to listen?" Leo said. Silence followed. Then a second voice from the other side. "This is a waste of time." "Perhaps," Leo said, "but what if it is not?" The powered down the whisper completely. No lights, no hum, just a dark shape against the stars. He opened the airlock and floated out in a simple pressure suit. No weapons, no tools, just himself. Luna watched from the bridge, heart pounding. But she did not interfere. He drifted toward the moon's surface and landed gently on the dusty plain between 2 old monuments, one carved with Kale's flower symbol, the other etched with Vorn's gear sigil. He sat cross-legged in the center and closed his eyes. He did not speak. He did not move. He just sat it. First, nothing happened. Then a small shuttle from Kale landed. A young woman stepped out, her hands empty. She walked to the edge of the plane and watched him for a long time. Then she sat too, not close but near enough to share the same sky. After another, our Vorn pilot landed. His armor dented his face hard, but his eyes curious. He stood at the opposite edge, arms crossed. But he did not leave. Leo remained still, breathing slowly, letting the quiet grow around him like roots in soil. By the 3rd hour, more had come, a dozen from each side, standing or sitting in a wide circle around him. No one spoke. No one moved. They just existed together in the same silence for the first time in generations. Then Leo opened his eyes and looked at them. Not with pity or expectation, but with simple presence. "I do not know your pain," he said softly, "but I know what it is to feel alone." A woman from Kale wiped her eyes. "My brother died in the border skirmish 10 years ago." A man from Vorn clenched his jaw. "My father was executed for trading with your people." They spoke not to argue but to share the weight they had carried alone. Leo listened, and in his listening they felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the possibility of it. By dawn, the circle had grown to 50 people from both worlds. They had not solved the war, but they had broken the silence, and that was the first real step. As the whisper left the system, a joint message followed from both planetary councils requesting regular visits. From the travelers, Luna prepared a new course, her hand steady on the controls. Leo sat beside her, sipping rehydrated apple juice. He looked tired but peaceful. "You carry so much," she said. "Not me," he replied. "It is not mine to carry. It is theirs, and I just hold the space for its." He nodded, understanding. Now what the Star Kings had truly meant. Their language was not about words. It was about making room for others to be seen. Their next stop was unexpected. A distress ping from a derelict vessel. Near the edge of known space, the signal was weak and old, but it carried a resonance pattern that matched the Star King's frequency. They changed course immediately. The ship was ancient, its hull scarred by time and radiation. It drifted silently, like a ghost. Leo suited up again and boarded alone. The interior was dark, the air stale but not empty. As he moved through the corridors, he felt it. A presence faint but familiar. In the heart of the ship, he found a chamber lined with crystalline pods. Most were cracked and dark, but one glowed softly inside. Was not a body but a swirling mist of light and memory. It pulsed gently as he approached. This was not a tomb. It was a seed. He placed his hand on the pod, and the vision came not of the past but of the future. The Star Kings had not all ascended. Some had chosen to stay behind, not in bodies but in vessels like this one, waiting for the galaxy to be ready to hear them again. This pod was a messenger meant to awaken when a resonant soul drew near. Leo understood his role was not just to listen but to prepare the way. He returned to the whisper with the pod carefully secured in a containment field. Luna examined it with awe. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Maybe it does," he said, "or maybe it just continues what was always meant to be." They decided to take the pod to the archive on Kaelos, the only place with the safeguards to study it properly. The journey would take weeks, but neither minded the quiet. Along the way they received a message from Earth Federation Command, not an order but a request. A delegation of human leaders wished to meet Leo. They had heard stories and wanted to understand how a simple delivery boy had become a bridge between species. Leo was hesitant. He had never sought attention, but Luna urged him to go. "This is not about you," she said. "It is about showing your own people that kindness is not weakness." So they diverted course toward Sol System. Arth looked small from orbit, blue and fragile. Leo had not been home in years. His old neighborhood unchanged, the same corner market, the same cracked sidewalk he walked past as a kid. Federation officials greeted him with stiff formality, but their eyes held curiosity, not suspicion. In a quiet room beneath the orbital hub, Leo sat with 5 representatives from different Earth nations. He did not give a speech. He did not show off the pod or recount his adventures. He simply told them about the Zenthari warrior who cried at a bell, the Grix queen who learned solitude could be love, the pirates of the Hollow Eye who began sending help instead of stealing. One woman asked, "Why you? Why not someone smarter or stronger?" "Because I was listening," he said, "and no one else was." They left. The meeting changed, not with new policies, but with new questions about what it meant to be human in a vast and varied galaxy. After Earth, they returned to Kaelos. The pod was placed in the inner sanctum where it began to emit a soft, harmonic tone that resonated through the entire Ringworld. Scholars from every species came to witness it, not to study but to feel. Then came the final test. A massive fleet appeared at the edge of the system, not hostile, but watchful. They belonged to the Orlan, the most advanced and isolated civilization in the Spiral Arm. They had never joined the Galactic Council. Never traded, never spoken to outsiders. They observed but never engaged. Now they sent a single ship, sleek and silver. It docked without permission, and a tall figure emerged wrapped in flowing gray robes, their face hidden. Their voice genderless and calm. "We have watched you." The Orlan said, "You carry the echo of the ones who came before." Leo stepped forward. "You knew them. We were their students." The Orlan replied, "But we failed. We sought knowledge, not wisdom. We built empires, not connections. And so they left us behind." They had spent millennia trying to earn their way back into the Star King's grace, through technology, through logic, through power, but they had missed the point entirely. Leo looked at them not with judgment but with sorrow. "You were never left behind. You just stopped listening." The Orlan knelt then, not in submission but in recognition of truth, in the weeks that followed. The Orlan opened their borders for the first time in history, not to conquer but to learn. They sent their youngest minds to sit with Leo, not to ask questions but to practice silence. The pod in the sanctum began to change its light, growing brighter, its tone deeper. One night it released a pulse that traveled faster than light, touching every world Leo and Luna had visited, and many they had not. Beings across the galaxy paused in their daily lives and felt a wave of calm, a sense of belonging, a reminder that they were not alone. Luna stood with Leo on the observation deck of the Whisper, watching the stars shimmer in response. "Is it over?" she asked. "No," he said. "It is just beginning." The Star Kings were not returning as rulers or teachers, they were returning as a presence, a quiet hum in the background of all life, a song that had always been there waiting for someone to hear it. And Leo, the delivery boy who once carried packages across the void, now carried something far more precious: the space between words, the breath before understanding, the silence that makes connection possible. He looked at Luna and smiled, ready for the next stop. She nodded and set the course. Not to a destination, but to wherever someone needed to be heard, and the Whisper sailed on into the starlit dark, carrying the oldest language in the galaxy, not in its computers but in the quiet hearts of those who remembered how to listen. The human delivery boy who unlocked the lost language of the Star Kings. The Whisper drifted through the outer rim where starlight grew thin and silence deepened. Not the silence of emptiness, but the kind that hums with waiting. Leo sat in the cockpit, his fingers resting lightly on the controls, not guiding but listening. The ship had learned to move with the rhythm of his breath, its engines tuned to the same frequency as the Star King's resonance. Luna stood behind him, her arms crossed. Not in doubt but in quiet awe, she had seen him change not into something grand, but into something steady like a stone in a rushing river. He did not command attention, he simply held space for it to gather. Their course had no name, just a series of faint pulses from the pod now resting in the ship's core. It had stopped glowing and instead emitted soft vibrations that felt like a heartbeat. The pod was not leading them to a place but to a moment, a convergence where many threads of listening would meet. They arrived at a dead system once rich with life. Now cold and still, the central star had collapsed long ago, leaving only a black hole wrapped in a halo of ancient debris, orbiting. It was a single station shaped like a spiral shell, its surface covered in moss that shimmered silver in the dim light. No signals came from it, no power signatures, no movement, yet the pod pulsed stronger here. Leo did not hesitate. He suited up and stepped onto the airlock platform. Luna followed without asking. This was not a mission, it was a calling. The station's interior was overgrown with the silver moss. It climbed walls and pooled on floors like liquid moonlight. The air was breathable, surprisingly warm, and carried a scent like rain on old stone. They walked in silence, their boots making no sound, as if the station itself absorbed noise to preserve something precious. At the center they found a chamber unlike any they had seen before. The walls were not solid but made of layered memory, not stored in crystals but in living light. Each layer showed a moment from a different species, a different world, a different time, all connected by one thread: the act of listening. A child on a desert moon hearing her grandmother's story for the first time, a soldier lowering his weapon because he saw fear in his enemy's eyes, a scientist pausing her experiment to watch a bird build a nest, a thief returning a stolen locket after hearing the owner's grief. These were not grand events, they were small quiet choices that rippled outward, and now they were gathered here, not as records but as seeds. In the middle of the room floated a single sphere of clear energy. It pulsed in time with the pod back on the ship. Leo reached for it, not with his hand but with his presence. The moment he did, the entire station lit up, not with light but with feeling. The Star Kings had not left one message. They had left millions, each waiting for the right heart to receive it, and Leo was not the only key. He was the first but not the last, as the energy washed over him. He understood his role was never to carry the message alone, but to show others how to carry it too. Back on the Whisper, the pod began to change. It cracked open not with violence but with grace, and from it rose a wisp of golden mist that curled around the cabin. then split into hundreds of tiny sparks, each one drifting toward a different part of the galaxy. Luna watched them go, her eyes wide. "These are not signals," she whispered. "They are invitations." "Exactly," Leo said. "Where?" Over the next few weeks, reports came in from all directions. A young Xanthari warrior on a remote outpost touched a rock and felt a wave of calm. A viral child humming a tune her grandmother never taught her. A Grix worker pausing mid-task because a memory that was not hers filled her mind. The sparks were finding those ready to listen. Not because they were special, but because they were willing. The galaxy was waking up, not to a new truth, but to an old one it had forgotten. Then came the call from Kalos. The High Council requested their immediate return. Something had changed in the vault. The inner sanctum was no longer silent. It was singing. They returned to find the archive transformed. The black crystal door now glowed with warm amber light, and inside the orb on the pedestal had grown into a tree of light, its branches stretching to the ceiling, its roots spreading through the floor. Scholars stood around it, not taking notes but simply breathing in its presence. Orion the Archive A spoke not through speakers but through the air itself. The resonance has spread beyond human capacity. The language is no longer locked. It is flowing. Luna turned to Leo, tears in her eyes. "You did it." "No," he said, "we all did." Because the truth was, it was never about him alone. It was about every being who chose to pause, who chose to hear, who chose to believe that connection mattered more than control. The council offered Leo a place among them, a title, a home, but he shook his head gently. "I am not a scholar, I am a listener, and listening happens out there, not in here." So they prepared the whisper for one last journey, not to fix or teach, but to witness. Their path took them to worlds they had never seen before, places untouched by war or trade, hidden corners of the galaxy where life bloomed in strange and quiet ways, on a water world with no land. They floated in a submersible as bioluminescent beings sang in pulses of color that carried whole histories in a single flash. Leo closed his eyes and felt their joy like sunlight on skin on a desert planet where time moved slower than anywhere else they sat, with elders who spoke only once a year. Their words so heavy with meaning that a single sentence could feed a village for months. Leo listened, and in that listening he understood that silence was not empty. It was full. Everywhere they went, the same pattern emerged. People were changing, not because of laws or leaders, but because someone had shown them that being heard was a gift, and giving that gift was even greater. Then came the day the pod's final spark returned. It drifted into the Whisper's cabin one evening as Leo and Luna shared a meal of dried fruit and warm grain. It curled around Leo's wrist like a bracelet, then dissolved into his skin, not painfully but like a sigh. He gasped, not from shock but from completion. "What was it?" Luna asked. "The last piece," he said. "The Star Kings are not coming back because they never left. They are in every act of kindness, in every moment of patience, in every time someone chooses to understand." Instead of when Luna reached for his hand and held it. "So what now?" "Now we keep going," he said, not as guides but as reminders. They set anew, course not guided by coordinates but by feeling. The whisper hummed softly as it turned toward the unknown, its engines whispering the oldest song in the galaxy, the song of listening on Earth. A child asked her teacher why the stars seemed brighter. Lately, on Varel, a musician composed a piece with no notes, just silence between breaths. On the Hollow Eye, a pirate shared his last ration with a stranger and did not ask for anything in return. The change was not loud. It did not shake planets or rewrite laws. It was quiet like a seed pushing through soil. But it was real. Yo stood at the viewport watching the stars blur into streaks of light as they jumped to the next system. He thought of his old life delivering packages to people who barely looked up from their screens. He had thought he was bringing them things, but now he knew he had always been bringing them connection, even if he did not see it. Then Luna joined him, her shoulder brushing his. "Do you ever wonder if we are enough?" He smiled. "Not with pride, but with peace. We do not have to be enough. We just have to be here." And that was all the galaxy needed. The whisper sailed on, not as a ship, but as a promise that even in the vast dark, someone was listening. And that made all the difference. The human delivery boy who unlocked the lost language of the Star King's years had passed since Leo first stepped into the vault on Kalos. And the galaxy was not the same. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts, still misunderstandings, still pain, but something fundamental had shifted. Beings no longer assumed the worst in each other. They paused, they listened. They tried the whisper. Still flew, but it was no longer alone. Dozens of small ships now carried the same quiet mission, not to preach or convert, but to sit with those who felt forgotten and remind them they were part of something larger. Leo and Luna had become symbols, not of power, but of presence. And though they never asked for followers, they inspired many to carry the practice of listening into their own corners of the stars. Yet even in this new era, a shadow lingered, not of malice but of absence, a region of space known as the Hollow Void, where no signals returned, no ships came back, and no resonance could be felt. It was a place even the Star King's echoes did not reach. The Council on Kalos had long marked it as dead. But the pod, which now rested in a cradle of living crystal aboard the Whisper, had begun to pulse toward it, not with fear, but with longing. Leo knew they had to go. The journey took weeks, the stars thinning until only a few pinpricks of light remained. The void was not empty. It was waiting. The Whisper's engines hummed lower as if holding its breath. Luna monitored the sensors, but found nothing. No radiation, no debris, no life signs yet. The pod glowed brighter with every light year. They crossed an invisible threshold, and the ship shuddered not from impact, but from silence. A silence so deep, it felt like pressure against the skin. Leo stepped onto the bridge, his eyes calm. He did not speak, he simply stood and listened. Then a voice came, not through comms but through the walls of the ship itself, soft and broken like wind through dry leaves. "You came." "Who are you?" Leo asked. "We are the ones who said not." The words carried no anger, only sorrow. Luna exchanged a glance with Leo. This was not an enemy, it was a memory. The pod floated from its cradle and drifted toward the viewport as if pulled by an unseen hand. It pulsed once, and a path of soft light appeared ahead, leading to a structure hidden in the dark. Not a station, not a ship, but a sphere of woven shadow and starlight. They docked without resistance. The airlock opened to a corridor lined with figures, not solid, but made of shifting mist, their forms flickering between species. Human, virile, Zenthari, Grix, Orlan. Every race that had ever turned away from connection. We were offered the song. The lead figure said its voice, a chorus of whispers, but we feared it would drown us, so we built walls and called them safety. Leo understood these were not rebels or monsters. They were those who had chosen isolation over vulnerability. They had locked their hearts so tightly even the Star King's resonance could not reach them. "Why show yourselves now?" "Because you did not come to fix us," the figure replied. "You came to sit with us." Leo stepped forward and sat on the cold floor. He did not speak. He did not offer solutions. He simply existed in their silence, and in that act the walls began to crack, not with force but with relief. One by one the mist figures knelt, not in surrender but in release. They had carried their loneliness for so long they had forgotten. It was a choice, not a sentence. Luna watched as the pod released its final sparks, not outward this time but inward, filling the hollow void with gentle light. The figures began to change their mist, solidifying into real bodies, not perfect but whole, their eyes clearing of centuries of fear. "We thought we were protecting ourselves," the lead figure said. "Now we see we were hiding from each other." Leo nodded. "You were never alone. You just stopped believing anyone would stay." Tears fell from faces that had not wept in lifetimes. They stayed in the void for many days, not to rebuild but to remember how to be together. The Whisper's cabin filled with quiet conversations, shared meals and long silences that no longer felt heavy, but healing. When they finally left, the void was no longer hollow. It pulsed with a soft golden light, a new star being born from the ashes of old fear back in known space. The change was spreading faster. Now schools taught listening as a core skill, not just language or math, but how to hold space for another's. Truth hospitals used resonance therapy to heal trauma, not with drugs but with shared presence. Even trade negotiations began with 10 minutes of silence, so all parties could remember they were speaking to beings. Not interest, Leo and Luna received messages daily, not requests for help, But thank you's a child on a mining colony wrote that she stopped a fight by asking her friend how they felt. A diplomat admitted he canceled a war after hearing the grief in his enemy's voice. A robot on a factory world reported it had begun pausing its tasks to watch the sunrise because it felt beautiful. The Star King's language was no longer a mystery. It was a practice. Then came the day the pod dimmed completely, its light fading until it was just a smooth stone. Warm to the touch, Leo held it in his palm and knew its work was done. It had carried the seed, and now the garden was growing on its own. Luna prepared a small ceremony. Not grand. Just the two of them on the observation deck. She placed the stone in a box lined with moss from the spiral shell station and set it adrift into space, not as a burial, but as a gift to the next listener who might find it. That night, Leo dreamed not of the past, but of the future. He saw 1,000 whispers flying through the stars, each carrying a different soul who had learned to listen. He saw children teaching their parents how to breathe before speaking. He saw enemies sharing tea in silence and finding common ground. Not in words, but in presence. When he woke, Luna was already at the controls. Where to now, she asked. He looked at the stars not as destinations, but as connections. Anywhere someone needs to be heard. They set course for a distant system where a young virile poet had sent a single line of verse that carried more truth than 1,000 treaties. The whisper hummed softly, its engines tuned not to speed but to Korea as they flew. Leo thought of his first delivery run, how he used to count the hours until his shift ended. Now he could not imagine a life without this quiet work of holding space for others. Luna broke the silence not with words but with a song. A simple melody her grandmother had taught her about rivers that flow not to reach the sea, but to carry the rain. Leo closed his eyes and listened, not to understand but to be with her in the moment. That was the heart of it all. Not fixing, not solving, not even healing, but being present. And in that presence offering the greatest gift one being could give another, the certainty that they were not alone. The galaxy was vast and full of noise, but in the spaces between the stars, a new rhythm was growing steady, patient and kind, the rhythm of listening, and it was enough to hold everything together. The whisper sailed on, not as the end of a story, but as a single note in a song that would never stop playing, as long as someone was willing to hear it. The human delivery boy who unlocked the lost language of the Star Kings in the year 2347. The galaxy hummed with the quiet rhythm of trade and travel. Humans were not the strongest or the smartest species among the stars, but they were reliable. They showed up on time, they fixed what was broken, and they never asked too many questions. Leo was one of them, a delivery pilot with calloused hands and a worn leather jacket that smelled faintly of engine oil and old coffee. His ship, the Blue Jay, was small and patched together with spare parts, but it flew true. And that was all that mattered. Leo's route took him from Earth's outer colonies to the far edges of Federation space. Most of his cargo was boring. Synth grain replacement parts. Data. Drives once a crate of live orchids for a diplomat's birthday. But he never complained. He liked the silence of deep space, the way stars looked when there was no planet nearby to drown them out. He liked being alone, but not lonely. His latest job was a simple drop off a box of refurbished memory crystals to the Xenolinguistics archive on Kalos Ringworld. Kalos was a marvel of ancient engineering, a massive hoop of metal and glass spinning gently around a quiet star. It held libraries and research centers from over 200 species, all working to understand the languages of the cosmos. Leo had been there twice before, always in and out in under an hour. This time was different. As he stepped off the Blue Jay onto the docking platform, the air felt heavier. The usual chatter of alien voices seemed muffled, like the station itself was holding its breath. The archive's main entrance glowed with soft amber light, and a low tone hummed from the walls. Not unpleasant, just strange. A voice spoke from the ceiling. Calm and synthetic. Welcome delivery designation Leo Human Earth Federation. Please proceed to verification gate. 7. Leo frowned. He had never been asked to verify before, but he walked where the lights guided him. The gate was a ring of silver metal embedded in the floor. As he stepped inside it, pulsed once a cool blue wave passed over his skin, and then the whole archive shuddered. Deep below the surface, something ancient stirred. Alarms did not blare. No guards rushed in, but every screen in the corridor flickered to life, showing the same symbol. A spiral of light wrapped around a single eye. It was the sigil of the Star Kings, a race that had ruled the galaxy thousands of years ago before vanishing without a trace. Their language had never been understood, their ruins filled with beautiful but silent script. Their legacy, a mystery wrapped in legend. Now the symbol glowed brighter with every breath Leo took. Within minutes, scholars began arriving from all corners of the ring world. Some floated on anti-grav discs. Others scuttled on too many legs, but all stared at Leo with wide eyes. One woman pushed through the crowd, tall, with smooth, dark skin and silver eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. Inside them, her name was Luna, and she was virile, one of the oldest spacefaring species, known for their patience and their obsession with lost histories. She stopped just inches from Leo, her voice low but steady. "What did you do?" Leo blinked. "I didn't do anything, I just walked through the gate." Luna studied him. Not his face, but his hands, his posture. The way he stood, like he was used to waiting for others to speak. First, she turned to the nearest wall panel and tapped a sequence of symbols. "Orion," she said. "Show me the resonance logo." Hologram appeared, showing Leo's biosignature as he passed through the gate. But overlaid on it was something else. A pattern of waves matching no known species, yet perfectly aligned with archived fragments of Star King script. "Impossible," Luna whispered. But it was real. The gate had not recognized Leo's species or his credentials. It had recognized his mind, his emotions, the quiet hum of his thoughts, which somehow echoed the frequency. The Star Kings used to encode their language not in words but in feeling. The Archive's AI Orion confirmed it. The vault of the Star Kings, located in sublevel Omega, has been unlocked by biological resonance signature match. Probability 99.8%. A murmur rippled through the crowd. No one had entered that vault in 800 years, not since the last scholar tried and failed and died of old age, waiting for a key that never came. Luna looked back at Leo. "You must come with me." He hesitated. "I have a schedule, I need to get back to my route." "This is more important," she said. Not as a command, but as a truth. Leo glanced at his ship, then at the glowing symbol on the wall. Something in his chest pulled like a thread tied to something far away. He nodded. They walked through corridors lined with shelves of alien texts, some written in ink, some in light, some in scent, that changed with the reader's mood. Luna explained as they went. The Star Kings did not speak like we do. They communicated through shared emotion, memory, and intention. Their language was alive. It required not just a mind to read it, but a heart to feel it. "That's why no machine could translate it," Leo said. "Exactly," Luna replied. They reached a sealed door made of black crystal etched with spirals that shifted when viewed from different angles. "This is it," she said, "the entrance to the inner sanctum. Only those who carry the resonance may pass." Leo stepped forward and placed his palm on the surface. The door did not open with a hiss or a click. Instead, it softened like water and flowed aside, revealing a chamber bathed in golden light. Luna followed him inside, her breath catching in her throat. The room was empty except for a single pedestal in the center holding a smooth orb that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. "Go ahead," she whispered. Leo approached slowly, as if waking a sleeping animal. He reached out and touched the orb instantly. The room filled not with sound but with presence. Visions poured into his mind, not as images but as lived experience. He saw cities built from light where children played by shaping clouds with their thoughts. He saw elders gathering under twin suns, sharing memories by pressing their foreheads together. He saw the moment. The Star Kings made their choice not to die but to change, to shed their bodies like old skins and become something new. Something beyond matter. And then he felt their sorrow, not for themselves but for those left behind, for the galaxy that would forget them, for the wars that would rage in their absence. Tears rolled down Leo's cheeks. He did not sob. He just stood there, trembling under the weight of a grief that was not his, yet felt completely familiar. Luna watched him, her own eyes glistening. She had spent her life chasing this moment, not to solve a puzzle but to understand a people, and now she saw it. The Star Kings had not hidden their language. They had protected it. waiting for someone who could carry it, not in their head, but in their heart. When Leo finally pulled his hand away, the orb dimmed, but the room remained warm. The door stayed open. Back in the main hall, the scholars waited in silence. Luna spoke clearly. The Star Kings did not vanish. They transformed and they left. Their final message not for the cleverest mind, but for the gentlest souls. He turned to Leo. You are that soul, Leo shook his head. I'm just a delivery guy. You are the first in 800 years to hear their song, she said. And that makes you more than just a delivery guy. The Council of Scholars debated for hours. Some argued that a human should not be trusted with such knowledge. Others said it was fate that brought him here. In the end, they agreed to let Luna continue her work with Leo as her guide. In the days that followed, Leo stayed on Kylos. He ate strange fruits that tasted like music. He slept in a room where the walls adjusted their color to match his mood, and he talked with Luna for hours about Earth, about his childhood, about why he liked flying alone. She listened not to gather facts, but to understand him. One evening, as they stood on an observation deck watching the Ringworld's artificial sunset paint the sky in violet and gold, Luna asked him, "Will you help us share? Share what the message the Star Kings left, not their history, but their hope that one day someone would remember how to listen." Leo thought about it, then nodded. Yeah, I'll help. He did not know what that meant yet, but he knew it felt right. Like finally delivering a package that had been lost for centuries, and somewhere in the quiet between the stars, the song of the Star Kings played on, waiting for more hearts to hear it.